It's, a setback because a few weeks ago, Qatar was already warning its customers that it could lift the force majeure by August, September. And some of Qatar's priorities are going to be delayed. And what we're seeing is that there is still a sword of Damocles hanging over the economies of the Gulf states. And those kind of repeated cycles of conflict are going to damage the confidence for the customers and investors.
Right. Mrs. Keene just emailed in surveillance correction.
Okay.
I said Qatar, and it is Qatar. Like
I
Qatar.
don't know.
Qatar.
I don't know.
Qatar. Leslie's correct. Mrs. Keene's correct. I'm wrong. What a shock.
So, Leslie, I know in a recent research note, you kind of lay out 3 scenarios for the war with Iran, and I'll summarize them. Comprehensive peace, back to war, and your scenario number 1, which is no war, no peace, which is kind of where we seem to be. If that's in fact the case, where we have ongoing discussions, ongoing skirmishes, what's that do to the global energy market?
So it creates a lot of uncertainties, when you look at demand, supply, demand balances, and prices are going to remain volatile. We've seen already, for gas, LNG, gas prices, JKM, TTF going back up yesterday and the day before with the series of attacks. So it's a lot of uncertainties. However, we've seen that following the short MOU that we've had so far, prices have come down, market has relaxed. And so it's kind of, the market restores its confidence pretty fast.
Yeah.
When you look at your world of natural gas and LNG, do you say that over time they can solve Hormuz just with pipelines, infrastructure, doing it the old way?
So I think it's easier to do for the oil side. And last time I was here, I mentioned, peak Hormuz. Maybe, Iran has used its stronger card, once and for all. On the LNG side, it's more complicated for the UAE and Qatar.
You just can't do a pipeline.
There are not that many alternatives. There is a small pipeline from Qatar to the UAE, but it's never wanted to be expanded. And however, those companies, those countries are going to look for diversification of their portfolio, buying equity stakes and having supply elsewhere out of the strait. But for now, for their molecules inside the strait, things are very complicated.
Before the war, the Strait of Hormuz was open for all traffic, and I think we all just assumed that was the way. We can't make that assumption anymore, can we? I mean, going forward, I don't think we can ever, if I'm an insurer, I'm never going to consider the Strait of Hormuz completely safe like I did before the war. How does that impact, A, is that true? And B, how does that impact kind of getting molecules out of there?
Yeah. So I think unless, we have this scenario of resuming the war and have very targeted objectives and, this idea of finishing the job that some Gulf states, really wanted at one point during the war, because they knew that as long as you have this bully IRGC in control, it's going to be really hard to restore the confidence of investors. And, even if some Gulf countries are going solo right now and are trying to placate Iran and having some kind of non-pact aggression, bilateral agreements, you never know what's coming next tomorrow. We know from history that those non-aggression pact never last.
Just one final question. Where does the LNG from the Persian Gulf go? I think our audience perceives the oil goes around India, goes through the Straits of Malacca to Asia. Same thing with their LNG?
So about 70% of Qatari LNG is heading to Asia, about 25% to China. So those are, the big markets.
And the critical message is there's no other way to get it. It's got to get out
so
of the boat.
So the most impacted are the emerging markets in Southeast Asia because they are the closest. And Qatar was, for them, they're only supplier. For some of them, Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, like the main supplier.
Have you been to Qatar?
I've never been to Qatar.
Okay. They ran it, and they're not Dubai. Dubai's been really quiet the last couple of days.
Yeah. Absolutely.
This is up the Persian Gulf.
But I think Qatar suffered, from what all the reporting I've seen, some serious damage.
So when the President of the United States says we're going to get rid of Karj Island, we're going to take over Karj Island, this island off Iran up by Kuwait and Iraq, how do you respond to that as an expert?
So, at one point when we were thinking about, this idea of finishing the job and the different targets that the U.S. military could go after, critically was to remove access of money, revenues to the IRGC, because they are the one benefiting from the oil revenues. They, that's their pocket money. Then they buy more weapons, and they continue the cycle of violence. So, this is one of the targets to really put an end to the money generation cash mashing for the IRGC.